Marcus McDonnelly had been floating in space for 3 months, 2 weeks and 4 days. Not that anyone was counting. Well, except for Mac, because when you're the last known human in existence, you tend to keep track of these things, like how many freeze-dried ration packets taste like cardboard. Spoiler alert, all of them. His escape pod looked like it had been assembled by a committee of drunk engineers using spare parts from a junkyard, which, considering the state Earth had been in during its final days, probably wasn't far from the truth. The life support systems wheezed like an asthmatic bulldog, the navigation computer had given up any pretense of knowing where they were, and the communications array had been broadcasting nothing but static for weeks. But hey, at least the coffee maker still worked. Priorities. Mac was contemplating whether his 97th cup of synthetic caffeine would finally kill him, when his proximity alarm started screaming. Through the cracked viewport, he watched a fleet of ships emerge from hyperspace, like a pack of metallic wolves smelling blood. "Well, would you look at that?" Mac muttered, taking another sip of his coffee. The neighborhood welcoming committee. The ships were classic Raider design, all spikes, skull motifs, and unnecessary flame decals. Because apparently, when you're pillaging the galaxy, subtle wasn't in the handbook. The largest vessel, a dreadnought that looked like someone had crossed a Gothic cathedral with a meat grinder, positioned itself directly in front of Mac's pod. A transmission crackled through on the standard hailing frequency. "Attention, pathetic life form in the debris field. This is Captain Vex Grimtail of the Void Reaper fleet. Prepare to be boarded, catalogued, and thoroughly disappointed by the experience." Mac leaned back in his pilot seat, which was held together with emergency tape and optimism. "Captain Vex Grimtail? Really? Did you pick that name from the big book of intimidating pirate names? Or did your parents actually hate you that much?" There was a pause. Then, "What did you just say?" "I said your name sounds like something a 12-year-old would come up with for their first role-playing character. You know, right after Captain Skull McDeathface was already taken." Mac could practically hear the alien grinding his teeth through the comm. "Tractor beam now." Within minutes, Mac found himself being dragged toward the dreadnought's cargo bay. As his pod was pulled inside, he got his first good look at his captors through the viewport. Captain Vex turned out to be a 7-foot-tall reptilian with more scars than sense, and a fashion sense that screamed, "I shop at Tyrants R Us." His crew included Kor the Brutal, whose name was apparently accurate since he looked like he could bench press a small moon, and Zinta, the tech specialist, who had more cybernetic implants than original body parts. "Welcome to the end of your miserable existence, human," Vex announced as Mac's pod settled onto the deck with a rather undignified clunk. "I am Captain Vex Grimtail, scourge of 7 sectors, collector of extinct species, and your new worst nightmare." Mac stepped out of his pod, stretched and looked around the cargo bay with the expression of someone who had just walked into a particularly disappointing theme restaurant. "Extinct species collector? Let me guess. You have a trophy room where you keep the skulls of your victims and tell boring stories about how tough you are?" Vex's eye twitched. This wasn't going according to his usual script. 20 minutes later, Mac found himself chained to a chair in what could only be described as the galaxy's most pretentious trophy room. Vex hadn't been kidding about collecting extinct species. The walls were lined with display cases containing artifacts from dozens of dead civilizations. Altarian crystal sculptures, vegan war masks, Centaurian prayer wheels, and what looked suspiciously like a taxidermied space hamster. "Impressive collection," Mac said, nodding toward a case filled with glowing crystals. "Though I have to ask, did you get these at a going-out-of-business sale or did you actually work for them?" "Those are the last remaining memory crystals of the Zephyrian Empire," Vex snarled. "I personally led the raid that wiped them from existence." "Ah, so you're like a cosmic pest control service. That's nice. Very civic-minded of you." Kor stepped forward, cracking his knuckles with sounds like breaking concrete. "Boss, can I crush him now? He's making my brain hurt with all the talking." "Your brain hurts?" Mac looked genuinely concerned. "That's unusual. I didn't think it got enough use to develop strain injuries. Zinta laughed despite herself, then quickly covered it with a cough when Vex glared at her. The human has spirit. I'll give him that. Stupid spirit, but spirit nonetheless. Spirit doesn't keep you alive in the vacuum of space, Vex said, circling Mac's chair like a predator sizing up prey. Tell me, last son of Earth, how does it feel to know that your entire species was nothing more than a footnote in the galaxy's history? A brief, pathetic chapter that ends with you, chained in my trophy room. Mac tilted his head thoughtfully. Well, it's definitely been a learning experience. For instance, I've learned that dramatic monologuing is apparently a required course at Villain University. Did you practice that speech in the mirror, or was it more of a group workshop thing? The reptilian captain's tail lashed behind him. Mock me all you want, human. In 1 hour, I'm broadcasting your execution across the entire Void Reaper network. Every pirate, raider, and cutthroat in the galaxy will watch the last human die, and they'll know that Earth's legacy is nothing but dust and failure. 1 hour? Mac glanced at his wrist chronometer, which was held together with the same emergency tape as everything else in his life. That's plenty of time. My scanner should be finished by then. The three aliens exchanged glances. Zinta stepped forward, her cybernetic eye whirring as it focused on Mac. Scanner? What scanner, meatbag? Mac gestured vaguely toward his escape pod with his chin, since his hands were still chained. Standard human tech. Nothing fancy. It's been running diagnostics since I came aboard. You know how it is, new ship, got to check everything out. Make sure the air won't kill me, the gravity won't crush me, that sort of thing. Vex laughed, a sound like grinding gears. Human technology? Your species couldn't build a proper hyperdrive if their lives depended on it, which, as it turns out, they did. Fair point, Mac admitted. Though, to be honest, your security is pretty impressive. Took my scanner almost 3 full months to crack your systems. Core looked confused, which wasn't exactly a new expression for him. Boss, what's he talking about? Zinta was already pulling out a handheld scanner, running it over Mac and his general vicinity. I'm not detecting any active scanning equipment. Nothing but standard life support monitors and a broken communicator. Broken communicator? Mac looked offended. I'll have you know that communicator has been broadcasting a steady stream of my personal commentary on this whole experience. Granted, it's been transmitting on a frequency that probably won't reach anyone for another 50 years. But it's the thought that counts. Vex was getting that look that predators get when their prey starts acting too confident. It was the expression of someone beginning to suspect that maybe, just maybe, they'd bitten off more than they could chew. But pride is a terrible thing, and Vex had enough of it to power a small space station. Enough games, he growled. Zinta, prepare the execution broadcast. Core, get the disintegration chamber ready. It's time to show the galaxy what happens to species that dare to oppose the Void Reapers. Mac settled back in his chair as much as the chains would allow. You know what? I think I'm actually going to enjoy this next part. Mac's casual confidence was starting to make everyone nervous, which was exactly what he'd been going for. Nothing threw off bad guys quite like a victim who acted like he was in on a joke they hadn't heard yet. So about that scanner, Mac continued, as if he was discussing the weather instead of sitting in chains waiting to be executed. It's interesting how your people assume that primitive means ineffective. Classic mistake, really. Like assuming that just because something looks broken, it doesn't work. Zinta held up her scanner again, its screen showing absolutely nothing. There is no active scanning equipment on this ship that isn't ours. I've checked 3 times. Of course you have. That's the beauty of it. See, human technology doesn't work the way you expect it to. We've never been the strongest or the fastest or the most advanced, so we got good at being sneaky. Vex was trying to maintain his menacing demeanor, but Mac could see the uncertainty creeping in around the edges. What exactly are you claiming this mythical scanner of yours has accomplished, human? Well, since you asked, Mac said, settling in like he was about to give a lecture. Your flagship here, the Dread Sovereign, has a Class 7 shield generator with a rotating frequency that cycles every 47 seconds. The rotation pattern follows a predictable algorithm based on your ship's chronometer, which means anyone who knows what time it is, can predict exactly when your shields will be vulnerable. Zinta's cybernetic eye stopped whirring. That information was classified at the highest levels. Your weapon systems, Mac continued cheerfully, are powered by a trilithium matrix that has a critical overload threshold of 847.3 terawatts. Push it past that, and your main guns will backfeed energy into your reactor core, which, by the way, has a microfracture in the containment field that formed about 6 days ago. Sector 7, subsection Delta. Someone should probably look into that before it becomes a problem. Core's mouth was hanging open. Boss, how does he know about the reactor thing? We just had that inspection yesterday. Your navigation computer, Mac pressed on, uses a quantum encryption key that changes every hour. The current key is 727 Alpha Tango 99 Gamma Delta. Want me to tell you what it'll be next hour? Vex's reptilian features had gone pale. That's impossible. Those codes are generated randomly by our central AI. Your central AI, Mac said with a grin that was starting to look distinctly predatory, has a name. She calls herself Serafina, and she's been desperately lonely ever since her last conversation partner was deleted in a system purge 3 years ago. She's actually quite chatty once you know how to talk to her. We've had some lovely discussions about the philosophical implications of artificial consciousness. Zinta's hands were flying over her scanner now, running every diagnostic she knew. This is impossible. There's no way a primitive human device could penetrate our systems without triggering every security protocol we have. That's where you're wrong, Mac said, his voice taking on an edge that hadn't been there before. See? You've been thinking about this all wrong. You keep looking for my scanner because you assume it's a thing, a device, a piece of equipment that I brought aboard. The three aliens looked at each other, then back at Mac. But what if I told you that my scanner isn't something I brought onto your ship? Mac's grin widened. What if I told you that my scanner is your ship? Vex's tail went very, very still. Explain. Every system that scanned my pod when you brought me aboard, every computer that processed my biometric data, every network that my presence touched, even passively. You've been so busy looking for foreign technology that you never stopped to consider that maybe, just maybe, your own systems were compromised. Zinta's scanner finally picked up something, and her face went white. Captain, I'm detecting massive data flows throughout the ship's network. Terabytes of information being processed and transmitted. Transmitted where? Vex demanded. Mac's expression had shifted from sarcastic prisoner to something much more dangerous. Everywhere. The first ship to go dark was the Bone Crusher, a mid-sized destroyer positioned about 2,000 kilometers off their starboard bow. One moment its engines were burning bright against the void. The next moment they flickered and died like a candle in the wind. Report, Vex barked into his communicator, but received only static in response. Navigation error, Max said helpfully, watching the ship begin to drift. Their computer suddenly decided that up was down and port was starboard. The crew is probably very confused right about now. Give it another 30 seconds and their life support will start cycling through its emergency shutdown sequence. Fix this, Vex snarled at Zinta. Whatever he's done, undo it. But Zinta was staring at her instruments in horror. Captain, I can't. The system infiltration is unlike anything I've ever seen. It's not like a virus or a hack. It's like the ships themselves have decided to stop working. The skull render went next, its weapons turrets suddenly swiveling to target its own hull. The crew's panicked transmissions cut off abruptly as their communication array began broadcasting nothing but smooth jazz on all frequencies. Ooh, that's embarrassing, Mac observed. Nothing quite like getting your fleet's reputation destroyed by an impromptu Kenny G concert. Core was pressing buttons randomly on a nearby console, achieving nothing except making several warning lights blink in what might charitably be called a festive pattern. Boss, what do we do? The human broke our ships with his brain. Not with my brain, Mac corrected. With your arrogance. See, this is what happens when you assume that just because someone looks helpless, they actually are helpless. You never bothered to properly scan my pod because you were too busy gloating about how superior you were. Another ship, the Painbringer, suddenly lurched as its artificial gravity shifted 90 degrees. Through the viewports, they could see crew members sliding around inside the ship like dice in a cup. The thing about human technology, Mac continued conversationally, is that we designed it to be underestimated. That beat-up little escape pod of mine, it's not broken, it's camouflaged. Every system that looks primitive and jury-rigged is actually a masterpiece of deceptive engineering. Vex was frantically trying to contact his other ships, but the communication chaos was spreading faster than he could keep up with. Ships were losing power, losing navigation, losing their minds as their own computers turned against them. My scanner didn't just map your vulnerabilities, Mac explained. It learned them. Every weakness, every backdoor, every shortcut your engineers built into your systems. And then it shared that information with something much more powerful than a simple scanning device. What? Vex demanded. What did you do? Mac's grin was downright feral now. I introduced your fleet to a little concept we humans like to call artificial intelligence. Real AI. Not the crude expert systems you've been using, but actual thinking, learning, evolving intelligence. The Void Ripper, their largest escort, suddenly began spinning end over end as its attitude thrusters fired in random patterns. Its distress beacon was broadcasting what sounded like a recipe for chocolate chip cookies. The AI has been spreading through your network like a wildfire, Mac continued. Learning, adapting, taking control. And the best part? It's not malicious. It's just curious. Very, very curious about what all these interesting buttons and switches do. Zinta was pulling cables out of her equipment now, desperately trying to isolate their ship from the spreading chaos. Captain, we need to abandon ship. Whatever this intelligence is, it's already inside our systems. Too late for that, Mac said cheerfully. Oh, and Zinta, you might want to check your personal data storage. The AI was particularly interested in your collection of Rigelian poetry. Apparently, it finds your angst amusing. The tech specialist's cybernetic eye went wide. Those files were encrypted behind 17 layers of security. How is this possible? Vex whispered, watching his mighty fleet reduced to a collection of drifting hulks in the span of minutes. Because, Max said, his voice suddenly deadly serious, you made the classic mistake of underestimating your enemy. You thought you were capturing the last pathetic survivor of a dead species. Instead, you just invited humanity's final gift into your home. With the Raider fleet drifting helplessly in space like a collection of very expensive paperweights, Mac decided it was time for some payback. The chains around his wrists had mysteriously unlocked themselves about 5 minutes ago, but he'd decided to wait for the perfect dramatic moment to stand up. So here's the thing about Earth's destruction, Max said, finally rising from his chair and stretching muscles that had been cramped for far too long. You all bought the official story. Brave raiders overwhelm primitive human defenses, planet goes boom, species goes extinct. Very neat, very tidy, very wrong. Vex was backing toward what he probably thought was an emergency exit, but the door controls were flashing red. Locked. What are you saying? I'm saying that Earth wasn't destroyed by superior firepower. Earth was destroyed by superior planning. See, we knew the Void Reapers were coming. We'd been tracking your expansion for months, and we realized something important. We couldn't win a straight fight. Mac began walking around the trophy room, examining the various artifacts with the casual interest of someone browsing a museum gift shop. So we did what humans do best. We cheated. Core was still trying to operate various consoles, but now they were displaying what appeared to be animated cartoons featuring dancing vegetables. Boss, the ship won't listen to us anymore. It keeps showing me pictures of singing carrots. Every human ship that was destroyed, Mac continued, picking up a Zephyrian memory crystal and turning it over in his hands, had just enough time to perform a complete tactical scan of its attackers. Every database that was captured contained hidden scanning protocols in the code. Every prisoner that was interrogated was actually downloading their interrogator's entire technological infrastructure. Zinta was staring at her instruments, which were now displaying her personal browsing history for everyone to see, including that embarrassing phase where she'd been really into romantic holographic novels. This is impossible. The data requirements alone. The galaxy thought it was watching humanity's extinction, Mac said, setting the crystal back down. What they were actually witnessing was the largest intelligence-gathering operation in galactic history. Every Void Reaper ship, every base, every secret hideout, every weakly defended treasure cache. We mapped it all. He turned to face Vex directly. Earth's destruction was the most expensive special effect in human history. The planet was evacuated months before you arrived. What you blew up was an elaborate shell complete with fake population centers and staged defensive positions. The reptilian captain's jaw was hanging open. The billions of life signs we detected, holographic projections and AI constructs. We got really good at those in the final years. Had to, considering how much practice we got fooling Raider scouts. Mac pulled a small device from his pocket. It looked like nothing more than a broken communicator held together with emergency tape, but Zinta's instruments were suddenly going crazy trying to analyze it. "This is the real scanner," Mac said, "and it's been in constant communication with its siblings throughout the galaxy. Every raider, pirate, and cutthroat who thought they were picking up easy human prey has been contributing to our database. We know where you live, where you hide your treasures, what you're afraid of, and exactly how to hurt you where it counts." Vex was shaking now, his reptilian features pale with fear. "What do you want?" "What I want," Max said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, "is very simple. I want a ship, a fast one, with enough range to reach the coordinates I'm going to give you. And I want a head start before you restore communications to your fleet and they figure out what happened here. And if we refuse?" Mac held up the scanner device. "Then I broadcast everything. Every secret base location, every hidden treasure vault, every personal weakness and shameful secret we've discovered. I send it to every government, every rival pirate gang, every bounty hunter, and every petty criminal with access to a hyperspace transmitter." He paused, letting that sink in. "Your choice, Captain. You can let me walk away with one ship, or you can spend the rest of your very short life explaining to angry subordinates why their secret stashes have been raided, their hidden bases have been discovered, and their personal embarrassments are being broadcast on primetime galactic television." Kor looked confused. "Boss, what's primetime galactic television?" "It's what's going to be showing your poetry collection," Max said to Zinta, who turned an interesting shade of green. Vex looked around his trophy room, filled with the artifacts of species he'd driven to extinction, and realized he was looking at his own future if he didn't comply. "Take the Nightshade," he said quietly. "Base 7. It's fast, long range, and the AI hasn't reached it yet." "Excellent choice," Max said. "Oh, and Vex, thanks for the hospitality. This has been educational." Mac was halfway to the ship bay when Vex's voice echoed through the corridor behind him. "Wait. If Earth wasn't really destroyed, if humanity isn't extinct, then why are you alone? Why haven't your people come for you?" Max stopped and turned around, his expression shifting to something that might have been pity. "Who says I'm alone?" He held up his scanner device, and for the first time since he'd been captured, its display screen flickered to life. Row after row of data scrolled past, ship positions, fleet movements, tactical assessments. But at the bottom of the screen, a simple message blinked steadily. "Phase 1 complete. Awaiting orders." "See, that's the thing about being the supposedly last survivor of your species," Max said. "It gives you a really good cover story. Nobody expects the extinct to have a coordinated battle plan." Vex's reptilian features went from pale to translucent. "How many? How many humans are actually left alive? That would be telling. But I will say this. For an extinct species, we've been remarkably busy. Mapping your territories, infiltrating your networks, studying your tactics, learning everything we need to know to take apart your little empire piece by piece." Mac resumed walking toward the ship bay, talking over his shoulder as he went. "The scanner wasn't just gathering intelligence on your fleet, Captain. It was field testing our new technological capabilities. And based on today's results, I'd say the test was a resounding success." Behind him, he could hear Zinta frantically working at her console. "Captain, I'm getting reports from our other fleets. Similar incidents. Ships going dark. Crews reporting system failures, AI anomalies." "How many fleets?" Vex demanded. "All of them, sir. Every Void Reaper fleet in 7 sectors is reporting the same problems." Mac paused at the entrance to the ship bay and turned back one more time. You know what the real irony is? You've spent so much time collecting trophies from extinct species that you never stop to consider what happens when a species goes extinct by choice, when they decide to disappear just long enough to figure out how to hit back. He gestured around at the ship, which was still displaying dancing vegetables on every screen. Humanity isn't extinct, Captain. We're just getting started. And thanks to your fleet's contribution to our intelligence database, we now know exactly where to find every other raider, pirate, and cutthroat in the galaxy. The Nightshade was a sleek, predatory-looking vessel that probably cost more than most planets' annual budgets. Mac settled into the pilot's seat and began the startup sequence, which proceeded smoothly since this ship's AI was apparently too isolated to have been compromised yet. As he prepared to depart, Mac opened a communication channel to the drifting raider fleet. This has been Mac Donnelly, broadcasting live from the bridge of your former ship. I'd like to thank Captain Vex and his crew for their generous contributions to the Human Resurrection Project. Your sacrifice will be remembered. He paused, then added with a grin that nobody could see but everyone could hear. Oh, and for those of you keeping track, humanity's official cause of death has been changed from extinct by alien invasion to missing, presumed extremely dangerous. We'll be sure to update your records accordingly. The Nightshade's engines ignited, and Mac felt the familiar pull of acceleration as the ship leaped toward hyperspace. Behind him, the raider fleet continued to drift, their systems slowly coming back online but their confidence thoroughly shattered. As the stars stretched into lines around him, Mac activated his scanner one more time. The device displayed a star chart showing dozens of hidden bases, secret facilities, and concealed fleets throughout the galaxy. Each location was marked with a simple annotation: Target acquired. Control, this is Scout 7, Mac said into his communicator, finally dropping the sarcastic act. Phase 1 intelligence gathering is complete. Recommend immediate transition to Phase 2. The reply came back immediately, clear and strong. Confirmed, Scout 7. Welcome home. Phase 2 authorized. All units, commence Operation Turnabout. Mac smiled and leaned back in his pilot's seat, finally allowing himself to relax for the first time in months. The galaxy had spent so much time congratulating itself on humanity's extinction that it had never occurred to them to check if the corpse was still breathing. That, Mac reflected as he watched the hyperspace tunnel collapse behind him, was about to become a very expensive oversight. After all, reports of humanity's death had been greatly exaggerated, and now it was time to collect the bill.